Evening to all the school trustees here and all the people that have come out to listen, and hopefully we'll all learn something from each other. My name is Kathy Smitsnook. I was born and raised in Brandon. My husband and I have 4 adult children, 2 adult grandchildren that all went to school here in Brandon. We now have 2 young grandchildren, just starting their education in the BSD. And to say that I'm worried about what's going on in our schools would be an understatement. I have attended the last 3 BSD meetings, 2 in person and 1 online, and I've become very concerned with the conduct of certain individual trustees, as well as decisions being made by this board as a whole. As I sat down to write this presentation and reflect over the past 3 meetings, I asked myself, how did we get there, or here? How did a simple request to review sexually explicit books in our school libraries escalate to, quote, banning books, end quote? How was forming a committee to review sexually explicit books translated to being hateful and discriminating? For starters, we do have books in the school libraries that are concerning. Books that are certain graphic cartoon photos of children masturbating, children performing oral sex, and children involved in other high-risk behaviors. They are in the schools. The idea of forming a committee to review such books came from a desire to protect all the children and to create a safe environment for all students, all of them. Certain books can support the division's diversity and inclusion guidelines and be age-appropriate, educational, and lawful, if they're all looked at. Sections 163.1, 171.1, and 152 of the Criminal Code of Canada clearly states that it is illegal to sexualize children under the age of 18 and to expose them to sexually explicit material. It was brought to your attention during the May 23rd meeting by the Director of the Library Services from Western Manitoba Regional Library that many full-time teacher librarian and librarian technician roles have been cut. She also explained that many of those positions have been replaced with part-time EAs that have little or no focus to library training. See the video recording at 56-minute mark by Erica Martin. You can read it there or hear it. Can you confirm how many full-time library positions in the Brandon School Division have been replaced with untrained staff? Do you guys know that? Who purchases our library books and who is responsible for making sure they are age and grade appropriate, educational, and lawful? Trustees, as you are aware, are you aware that you are not personally indemnified when an offense is in violation of the listed sections of the criminal code stated above? You are also not indemnified if you are found guilty of dishonoring, gross negligence, malicious, or willful misconduct. In the Brandon School Division values and mission statements, the values framework in policy number 1 states, I quote, the Brandon School Division of Trustees recognizes and supports the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Children of the Child and the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, of which both these rights documents provide the framework for the core values of the Brandon School Division. I agree we should support the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, being that we are Canadians. But why are we supporting the United Nations? Since when did this unelected body have influence over the students in the Brandon School Division? According to policy number 7, the position of school trustee is one of responsibility and trust, and the individuals on the board must conduct themselves accordingly. The board member code of conduct goes on to state in 7.5 of the policy that trustees must, quote, contribute to open and honest discussions about matters before the board or committee, end quote. 7.6 states that the trustees must, quote, listen respectfully and with open mind to the full range of opinions and to make their decisions based on the merits of these varying opinions. end quote. Trustees, did you contribute to open and honest discussion at the Vincent Massey meeting on May 23rd? Did you listen with respect and keep an open mind when they were talking? Did you do your due diligence and look into the books that were being questioned so you could base your decision on the merits of varying opinions? Personally, I found the entire May 23rd, quote, board meeting, end quote, very disturbing. And I use the word, quote, board meeting loosely, at the presence of signs, drums, coordinated clothing, and the public yelling profanities is not normal board meeting etiquette. If the goal was not to divide the community further but rather to focus on the request of forming a committee to review the sexually explicit books, the board may have wanted to appear a little more neutral and professional to the public. Are you aware that out of town and out of province citizens had seats in the gymnasium that night and that local concerned parents with children in the Brandon School Division were turned away? At the board meetings I've attended in the past, I've had to sign in and give my contact information at the door. Why wasn't this done on May 23rd? How did you decide that 29 speakers who condoned sexually explicit books to children versus 2 speakers against such books would create a fair debate? I think it's also worth noting that out of the 29 speakers, 9 of them were from the government-funded agencies, most from Brandon University, not concerned parents who actually have children in the school division. Brandon University, I do have those listed. Out of those same 29 speakers, you allowed 3 of them to speak over their 15-minute allotment time for presenters. See the video recording at approximately 1 hour, 28 minutes. Laura Cruikshank spoke for 19 minutes at approximately 3 hours, 12 minutes. Dr. Gautam Srivastava, and I'm sorry if I pronounced that totally wrong, spoke for 16 minutes and approximately 3 hours and 51 minutes. Carrie Judd and Marshall Morizot spoke for 17 minutes. Alternately, 1 out of the 2 speakers voicing their opinion for, quote, the other side, was threatened that his time was almost up before he reached his 15 minutes, and he was being heckled and yelled at by the public during his entire presentation. When did it become acceptable that the Brandon School Board meeting behavior to disrespect, verbally attack, and shame members of our own community and elected trustees for holding a different view? Clearly, 7.7 clearly states that trustees must, quote, treat board colleagues, divisional and school staff, students, community members in a respectful, courteous manner and refrain from using abusive or denigrating language in any dealings with them. During the closing remarks on May 23rd, see the video recording starting at 5 hours and 23 minutes, an elected trustee said that one of the presenters was, and I quote, the most bigotful, hateful, ignorant, uneducated nonsense that I had heard in 68 years, end quote, and then pointed to the presenter with disgust and said, in quote again, you should be ashamed of yourself. That was Trustee Mary. Does that sound respectful and courteous to you? To me, it sounds like abusive and denigrating language to me. Another elected trustee pointed to that same presenter and said, quote, I'm not going to use that name, use the name gentleman to the man sitting over there. Quote, be careful who you hate because it might be someone you love. That doesn't even make sense. The topic at hand was sexually explicit books in our libraries. It had nothing to do with anyone hating anybody. Trustee Fallis. Fallis. Pardon me.
Please use my correct name.
Fallis. 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 Okay. At approximately 5 hours, 38 minutes during the meeting, while Trustee Seklecki was trying to make the point that there are age limits for drinking, smoking, video games, movies, but not for books, a man from the public yelled, fuck you, fuck off, directly at her. That was a quote. This is and quote again, abusive and denigrating language. Even more shocking was the fact the man wasn't removed from the board meeting for his behavior. We just looked at him. Lastly, an elected trustee and chair of the meeting finished by saying that a previous presentation at the last meeting was less than bright. Well, that's Mrs. Trustee Ross. You. So it's obvious that Policy 7 was breached several times during the May 23rd meeting by several elected trustees. Is there a possible conflict of interest as outlined in the Public Schools Act 2? Regarding the May 23rd meeting and the motion and the vote to oppose a committee to review sexually explicit books, since when are motions 3 minutes long, pre-scripted and read from a laptop? See video recording at approximately 6 hours, 1 minute. Trustee Gobley. I'll ask the question again, elected trustees. Did you listen respectfully and with an open mind to the full range of opinions presented and written? Did you do your due diligence and actually look into the sexually explicit books that were brought to your attention? Are you aware of who purchases our books? And did you make your decision based on all of those merits? It appears to me that you had already made up your mind before the meeting at Vincent Massey and that the meeting itself was just a political show. The board has a legislated duty to care to do everything possible to ensure the physical and emotional safety of our students, as well as opportunity and responsibility to be transparent and regain trust in our community. That is why I have 3 requests for you. Request 1, I ask that you reconsider forming a committee to review sexually explicit books in our school libraries and classrooms. If the book in questions are found not to breach Canada's criminal code, then no harm done, nothing is lost other than the time committed by those volunteering to review the books. Question number 2, following the guidelines outlined in the Public Schools Act, I ask that you consider reprimanding Trustee Mary, Trustee Fallis, and Trustee Chair Ross for breaching the board member code of conduct on May 23rd and a possible conflict of interest. Request number 3, a freedom of information request for all the details concerning the leading up to the May 23rd meeting, including but not limiting to emails and attachments regarding the sexually explicit books and how the decision was made to oppose a committee to review them. I'm sure that's there. To finish off, I would like to say that there is not just a few parents and grandparents speaking out anymore. This is a Canada-wide and beyond movement, and it's growing every single day. Many different ethnic groups are coming together to protect the innocence of our children. No one cares who you love, but leave our kids alone. Thank you.